welcome to another jungle tutorial. And at the request of the people in the comments, even though most of my videos are equal weighted in that they do not include raw stomps that we learn nothing, I am going to give you a game where both junglers try to 1v9 and carry their potato squad. There are absolutely no raw spud laners in these games, so we can look to see what happens when you as a jungler maybe are popping off and the enemy jungler is doing exactly the same thing. You gank bot, he ganks top, you have all the kills, everyone else in the game is completely useless. We're going to look at how this works and then what you can do to close the game out and get the win when you are in that battle of who can 1v9 the best. And on screen you would have seen the runes for both these junglers. We have a Wukong and a Hecarim. Wukong, despite not really being a champion anymore, still is really good in those lower mid MMRs. His surprise factor, his burst, the fact that people forgotten what exactly he does, means his damage and his output can really be surprising, whereas Hecarim on the other hand, we all know as you watch the first clears going on here, we all know what he can do, being top tier jungler for many months now. And so from a clear perspective, we do have a little bit of an interesting route, the Wukong going from his blue to his red to his Krugs. This will then enable him to go down to the Raptors and camp sequence from top to bottom. This will be great for Rubber Bandit XP and getting that level 6. Hecarim on the other hand does his red, Krugs, Raptors, a standard red side clear with an onus on perhaps getting a Predator if you are running that rune, or simply having a bit of a gank on the bottom or mid lane, which of course he does, before heading to his top side. Now, Hecarim gets a top side scuttle, Wukong gets the bottom side scuttle, the monkey then heads to the mid lane and grabs that flash first. Most notably, you have to pay attention when you are a jungler which laners have dashes and which laners are immobile. For a Wukong, if there are laners with no mobility, burning that flash at this stage is crucial because by the time that's up again, you will already have your ultimate and you will already have had the chance to return there and try and get a kill with your ult. However, after a little bit of a 1v1 in the mid lane between the Brand and the Lucian, the Hecarim has a heads up play, rotates around the back of that mid lane and secures himself the first blood of the match. And so we'll begin our insane amount of kills that go back and forth between these junglers. Now, getting your second Krog spawn is of course the most important part of your camp sequencing. Hecarim does those before heading back to base, and then Wukong goes back to base before doing the same thing. Now, because Wukong had blown the flash on that Brand a little bit earlier, after doing those second Krogs and Raptors, he can rotate around and abuse the fact that Brand has no flash, and Lucian grabs the kill. Most important part about this is if you want to 1v9, and especially if the enemy jungler is also trying to 1v9, you have to be aware of where your focus should be, and if it's on camp clearing in the correct order to get that level 6, you also need to know how to weave in those ganks on your travels so that you can abuse the fact that you've burnt summoner spells or that someone is low, and both junglers so far have done this very well. And they are also focusing on that scuttle spawn. Remember, in the higher tier games we regularly review, there's a huge direction of pathing towards that scuttle crab to get that gold, to get that experience. However, in the case of the Wukong here, your mid laner is very low, he needs to go back to base. The Donger in the top lane is shoving in, which means he's going to be able to rotate first, and you should have been able to see him rotating first, and thus the fact that you get chased down by the Hecarim and then have to flash out is really a waste of your summon spell and a waste of your all-in level 6 potential. However, when I told you there were no raw spud laners in this game, I really meant it. The Akali, I don't know really what she's trying to do here, half HP in a 2v1, but it's not level 18, it's not the end of the game, you are actually useless, and she gives Hecarim his second kill. So as a jungler, sometimes you will get spoon-fed a few kills, sometimes the enemy jungler will get spoon-fed a few kills, and yes, I will make a video on why junglers hate their laners in a more intricate discussion about this, but in this case, it's not one of those moments to tilt, get your level 6 and continue to have good impact. And on the note of good impact, the Hecarim has just reached level 6, goes down through the mid lane, walks down through the river, and heads to the bottom lane. The bottom lane for the Wukong have actually backed up just a little bit, and so Caitlyn has to burn a flash, but I'm not sure if the Hecarim was in any position to get a kill there, so ulting is a little bit over the top. The mere threat of him actually being there would have burnt a flash anyway. And had a more in-depth fight broken out in a 3v2 on the bottom lane, the Wukong wouldn't have been able to rotate because he contested that crab he probably shouldn't have, his health got depleted, his flash was burned, and even though he just reached level 6 on his Grump, he is in no position to counter gank, and so that's just something to keep in mind when you're making decisions, the knock-on effect of those decisions, even when you are trying to carry a game. And so as you can see, the Hecarim goes back into his jungle to do some more camps, but he hasn't been back in a while, he hasn't spent that gold, he doesn't have that gold reset, and so his mana is a bit low. And as Wukong continues the pressure on the mid lane, and that's the thing, guys, if you want to get fed, you have to focus on a lane. Abuse the immobility, abuse the fact that summoners are down, try and get one of your laners fed, and if not, at least you get fed. Wukong strikes first blood with his ultimate there, grabbing a kill on the Brand, and even though the Hecarim rotates, he doesn't have his ultimate, he has no more mana, and he has to simply trot away from the situation. So at this stage you're probably wondering when exactly the explosion takes place, and we're going to start running through it now. They've had an intricate early game back and forth, some ganks in the mid, some ganks in the bottom lane, and now the Hecarim uses one of the core things of hard carrying games, of getting that 1v9 going, and that's extended sequences. I've referred to it many times in my previous videos, but we've also learned that Canyon from the Korean server, who won MVP in the LCK this split, he uses this all the time. He stays up very long, he almost hoards his gold. And why? Well, if you have resources, if you have health, if you have dominating spells and fast map rotations, being on the map is your most powerful resource. So in this case, the Hecarim has done this. He's clearing bot to top lane, he does have the blue buff now, and the fact that his ult is up means he can easily punish the overextending Akali. And this is one of the most important things. When people are overstaying, when people are low resources, even if you're a little bit on the low side yourself, if you have a strong pick in your hands, if you have your ultimate up and they don't, use that to grab yourself a free kill. All of this is absolutely huge for the Hecarim, and so far, he is having the bigger map impact, and while the Wukong is focusing his farm, he has had the bigger impact on the mid lane. And as I say that, he shows up in the mid lane with his ultimate again and gets another kill. So the mid lane is being shut down and controlled by the red team's jungler. Bottom lane has had the Hecarim show up once or twice, and of course he's had the drive-by on the top lane. Now this particular Hecarim player, he does play Hecarim, he knows what he's doing, he actually rushes the Cinderhulk here. With that amount of gold, I'm probably looking to get my Triforce done as soon as possible, especially given the lead you have. However, he's thinking a bit more of a bruiser build rather than the one-shot Hecarim build, and that's fine, that still works. It's just worth noting that it can be harder to 1v9 depending on your champion, so your itemization needs to be correct and in the best way possible for you to continue to snowball your own lead. So now you'll see a quick highlight of the Wukong showing up at bottom lane. Sadly, once his support has died, the Alistar's flash is burned, and then Lucian, as he was roaming down to the bottom side, gets intercepted by the Hecarim and finished off by a long-range Kaiser W. Hecarim then follows this up with a nice rotation on the overstaying low mana Caitlyn. 2v1 and she also falls. So you can see and feel the Hecarim's map presence is definitely stronger than the Wukong's, whereas the Wukong, instead of using the extended sequence heavy rotational playstyle to get himself fed and clean up lanes, he's using the gank the living hell out of one lane to make the enemy completely useless and make himself, well, the Monkey King. And so we go through a little bit of a quiet phase, a lot of drive-by ganks, at least showing pressure while farming. The Wukong does pick up a kill on a one-shot Heimerdinger in the top lane. The Hecarim does yet another gank on the bottom lane, and I think what you can take away from this is very much knowing as a jungler how to be opportunistic and how to read the map so that you know when you can actually go and take advantage of low HP enemies. You're not waiting around too much, you're still farming, and when that opportunity arises, you can make the right map read and be in a position to make the play. And now obviously this game has been a little bit crazy, but that's because no lane is really in the best position. I'd say the blue team's bot lane is doing very well. The mid lane is kind of neutral in a 1v1 sense, but the Wukong is camped to keep his Lucian as competitive as possible. And top lane is top lane, both have overstayed, and the Akali has made a completely donut move. So the next phase of the game is obviously we're heading into the mid game. How can you continue to keep yourself fed and continue to carry your laners both from Hecarim's and Wukong's perspective? Obviously at this stage we want to start focusing towers, a dragon hasn't been taken, objectives need to start to factor in and not just kills. Hecarim knows his bottom lane's in the best position for that, obviously dragons on the bottom side, another gank, another shove of the minion wave, and then Mountain Drake is theirs. But then the Wukong, you know, you're always told never gank losing lanes. That's not always necessarily true. You just need to wait, ward, and punish the mistake when they make it, because everyone will make mistakes, and that's why I chose a game from this particular elo range. And as such, Wukong is able to grab a shutdown on the Kaiser. That's very good, a nice bit of gold for himself. And remember, when an enemy has a shutdown gold and you yourself are fed, go and take it, it's yours, you are owed it, right? I mean, your laners are inting, you might as well get all the shutdown gold. However, the Wukong does feel like he's lagging behind the decision-making of the Hecarim at this stage. The Hecarim is now saying, I'm going to take control of this game. As such, he's also gotten another kill on the Lucian in the top lane. He secured that Herald. He goes back to get his Trinity Force. Yes, Wukong is able to clean up a kill on a Kaiser who was overstaying, who still almost killed his Akali, to give you an idea of the state of the lanes. But the fact that Wukong is just picking off enemies with no real purpose to it, while the Hecarim is taking out enemies and then securing objectives, is the playstyle I would encourage you to follow more so than the Wukong, and that's why Hecarim is such a top tier pick at the moment. And we talked about the importance of itemization in your ability to 1v9, and you can see from the Hecarim's kill on the Lucian in the mid lane, and the fact that they follow that up with yet another kill on the Akali, that his Cinderhulk Trinity Force combination is proving very very useful against the heavy damage of the enemy team and allowing him to sustain up with that Conqueror rune. And for all you low elo people trying to get gold before the end of the season, what's the one thing I keep telling you? Don't pick things that are ultra squishy because you want to be able to live as well as dish out damage, and the Hecarim is showing you the power of that even in Diamond. Before we jump to the crucial moment in the game which will decide who wins it and which jungler can 1v9 better, when you are playing Wukong, when you're playing Rengar, Evelynn, anything like that that is going full assassin burst damage, it's very vital that you do not let any split pushing ADC, any split pushing squishy champion survive. She's knocking on the tower, Wukong rotates over, takes her out. It's that simple. Don't give them any time to breathe, and even though your team is kind of falling apart, even though the Hecarim is making objective moves, the fact that you can continually and routinely take at least one person out guaranteed from a side lane removes that minion pressure and push pressure of the enemy team and buys your team time to sort of gather itself a little bit, and also buys you time to catch up in items and be ready to carry those team fights. And our first death from our junglers comes from the Hecarim. We have the Akali once again dying to the Hecarim in the middle lane. However, the Fire Dragon is up, and the fact that they're now 4v5 means Wukong can't do it. The Zyra hits a very good zoning ult, gets enough damage off on the Hecarim and has plants kind of going a bit nuts in the middle of them. That's divided the team up, and as Wukong now, you are the super fed member. You must make sure that your team doesn't lose this fight. You don't have to win it, but you don't want to lose it. You see the damage by taking out the Heimerdinger, and then he continues to threaten the flank, and that's what you want to do if you're an assassin. If you have that combo, that wombo combo with the Zyra, you need to, and you should want to, continually threaten that side dive. As soon as the peel and the tankiness is gone from the backline, that's when you go in and you eradicate the carries. And herein is the final phase of that hard carry from the jungle position. You need to understand your itemization and your team fighting role. The Wukong understands this significantly better than the Hecarim. Once again, they're fighting over the Fire Dragon just a few minutes later. The Akali is dead. However, the enemy team has a Zyra, and you following into a choke point means that she can easily put her plants down and poke you out. So the Wukong knows now to play off of the Zyra, given that she seems to be doing the better job in the fights. As such, this leaves the backline exposed. You don't want to overstay your welcome. He goes in, assassinates the brand, and dances with his pogo stick all the way back towards his team. He doesn't stay and greed for even more kills. The fact that the brand is gone is huge. A nice zoning ult by Zyra means that the Alistar can now be focused down, and because of the repeated plant hits onto the Hecarim, he gets poked down to such a level he has to ult out. He did not even use his ultimate in a crucial fight over the Fire Dragon, except to escape, and that is poor team fighting on his part. And while Zyra hits a root onto the Kaiser, they can finish her off and then they secure that Fire Dragon. So now the Hecarim hasn't had such a beautiful sort of, let's just call this late game at this stage. It's not really, but let's just call it late game because everyone's grouping and fighting over objectives. And why I kind of like this game to show you is because it devolved into a no real strategy, no real macro sort of perfect ending game. But a lot of your solo queue games are ARAM fests, fighting fests, fiestas. But again, Hecarim is just using his ultimate to dive the Akali and get that kill. He's not thinking about the greater fight, whereas Wukong is picking and choosing his moments much more carefully and playing off of his team in these fights, and that's getting him the damage on the backline that he needs, and it's allowing his team to clean up where possible. Whereas Hecarim's lead is nothing if all he's gonna do is ult the first person there and then be useless. He's not flanking, he's not diving the backline, he's not disrupting, he's not using the Hecarim kit to its full potential. And so as this game has sort of reached a neutral equilibrium point where both teams are just hitting each other's heads and both junglers are trying as best they can to hide when the team fights, Wukong is doing a better job on that end, the game will come down to which jungler can actually make the right play during these messy moments. Hecarim once again is a little bit out of position and gets pushed down the mid lane. The rest of his team has moved into their jungle, and Wukong uses this to his advantage. He immediately takes out the brand, he forces out the Zhonya's and then kills the Heimerdinger. He's now able to flank with the rest of his team, and Hecarim is pushed off of that fight. He's low HP. This gives his team a direct path to the inhibitor, and then they can fall back to Baron. Now they are able to secure it, but the most important thing here is that you get out alive and keep the Baron, so I don't always recommend going back in and turning. The enemy team has just gold reset, they've come in, you haven't spent their gold, you're low on resources, no point in burning your GA, so be very careful in this situation. The Wukong is lucky, he gets out no problem. However, please do keep that in mind. If you fall back to Baron right after an inhib, the enemy team will be spawning, they will be able to get there quickly, so time it and know when to turn and know when to finish the Baron and know when to simply back out. But because they do actually end up winning the fight, the Akali, despite having a few little good teamfight moments at the end of the game, TP's down to the bottom lane and is able to use the Baron push to finish off the Nexus. Smart team fighting, knowing when to play with your teammates and not simply wasting your ultimate to secure that one kill on the front line when you are the carry member is one of the most important aspects to being able to win games as a jungler. Remember to use all the things used by both junglers in this game to get yourself ahead and to make sure your laners, even if they are losing, at least feel like you care just a little bit. Use those extended sequences to stay out and pick off kills, and if you do all these things, you will easily have a strong impact even against another jungler who is trying to do the exact same thing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Please do like, share, and comment if you did. We are also on the road to 100k subscribers, so if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.